I went back to the house at 10 o'clock that evening. I had a few more questions to ask Selina. This time, another security guard opened the gate. Selina met me at the front door again. She was dressed for bed, in pyjamas and a dressing gown.
I always go to bed at 10 o'clock,
she explained.
I have to control all my father's business interests, and I go to bed early and get up early.
That's not much of a life for a girl of your age, I said. Anyway, Miss, or do you prefer Ms. Willing?
Miss is fine, but call me Selina,
she interrupted with a smile. Fine, Selina, I said. Call me Richard, I added, with what I think is my most attractive and seductive smile. First, then, I have 1 or 2 questions I want to ask you.
Of course. Please come in.
I followed her into the living room, and we sat down. Well, firstly, do you ever see your brothers these days? Do you have a good relationship with them? I asked.
No, is the answer to both questions, I'm afraid. We've never had a good relationship, even when we were children. They were always against me. They used to call me Daddy's little girl because I loved my father and I wanted to help him, especially after my mother died. They left here after the problem of the inheritance was over. You know all about that, I suppose.
I nodded.
That was about a year ago,
she continued.
And I've only seen them once since, by chance. I was walking past a cafe near Knightsbridge, and I saw them through the window. They were talking to 2 or 3 other men, foreign men, I think, dark-haired and fairly dark skins, from some part of Asia, perhaps.
I see, I said. But another question. Do they have keys to the gate and to the house? Selina looked surprised.
Do you suspect them of something?
She asked. Let's say I'm trying to eliminate possibilities.
Well, yes, I suppose they still have keys to the house, but not to the gate. No one has a key to the gate except the security men. There are 5 of them, and they work shifts. 2 work nights, and the others during the day. At least one of them is on duty 24 hours a day.
And another question. Does anyone else live in the house?
No, not even the servants. There were some old stables which we converted into apartments some years ago, close to the house, on one side. All the servants live there.
So, I said, after 11 or 12 at night, there's no one in the house except you.
That's right,
she answered. All right, just one more question before you go to bed. There isn't a basement or cellar below this house, is there?
No, nothing. Somewhere there are some old plans of the house. I've seen them, and there's nothing but the 3 floors.
Right, I said. No more questions for today. Oh, except, where do I sleep?
One of the servants will show you to your room when you're ready to go to bed. If you want something to eat or drink, you just have to ring this little bell.
Thank you, but I don't want anything. I'll go to bed soon, too. I've brought a book to read in bed, I added. I took out of my pocket the book I was reading at the moment, a paperback copy of Henry Esmond, a well-known 19th century English novel by William Thackeray.
You like good books, Richard,
said Selina.
So do I, when I have time to read. I've read that one, and everything else by Thackeray, I think. It's very good.
I was beginning to like Selina. Young, very good-looking, and with good taste in literature. Just my kind of girl. Nothing happened that first night. No noises, nothing. I saw Selina at breakfast, and I asked to stay another night. She said that I could stay as long as I wanted to. There were noises the second night. As I was getting up, I realized they were not inside the house, but outside, in the grounds. And they were not human noises, but animal noises. I looked at my watch. It was 2:25. I suppose the tigers were looking for another servant to eat. I went back to bed. The third night, yes, noises. This time inside the house. I thought I heard footsteps, and perhaps a door opened and shut. I got up immediately, put on my dressing gown, and went out of the bedroom. Selina was coming out of her room at the same time.
Do you hear it?
She asked. I can hear it. I'm going down to see what it is. I went into every room on the first floor, and then on the ground floor. Nothing. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. And Selina was right. The moment I left the bedroom, the noises stopped. I went back to the second floor. Selina was still waiting at her bedroom door.
Well?
She said. Well, nothing, I answered. Your ghost is very elusive. The next morning, I sat down at my desk in my office. I left the newspaper on the desk without opening it. I needed to think. It was the fourth day on this case, and I didn't have even one clue. Thoughts, possibilities came into my head and went out again. Nothing seemed to make any sense. I knew what I had to do. Go home and drink 2 or 3 cups of my special coffee brew. This idea I got from the 19th century French novelist Honoré de Balzac. This enormously productive writer, he wrote and published about 90 novels, wrote mainly at night and usually for 14 or 15 hours without stopping. Then he went to bed for a few hours and tried to sleep. Not very successfully, I imagine, because to keep himself awake and, more importantly, to keep his imagination working on all cylinders, he drank many cups of coffee while he was working. Not just any coffee, but his own special mixture of coffees, in exact proportions, bought from various coffee merchants in Paris. While he was writing his first books, he experimented until he had a coffee mixture as strong as coffee can be. Then, from time to time, he visited his coffee dealers in Paris to renew his supply. Now, I don't write novels, but I do sometimes have cases which are very difficult to work out and which call for some really imaginative thinking. And as Balzac's recipe for his special mixture has not survived, as far as I know, several years ago I decided to experiment with creating one for myself. I went every few days to a coffee dealer who has a little shop in Soho and who sells only coffee. Coffee from everywhere. I don't remember how I started, but it was something like this. Put 2 ounces of Colombian, then mix in 1 ounce of Indonesian, now 3 ounces of Brazilian, and so on. By changing the proportions, and sometimes the source countries, each time for about a year, I achieved my own special, very strong blend, one that could help me to think of possibilities that I couldn't reach without help. Now, just as Balzac did, I go to my coffee dealer every 2 or 3 months. He knows me well. £2 of your special, Mr. Boot? He asks with a smile. At home, I made a pot of my mixture. Then I poured the first cupful, and, while I was sipping it, I did some housework. As I live alone, this is a necessity from time to time, although I'm not very good at it. So, still sipping, I made the bed for the first time that week and washed and dried some plates and cups and saucers which were waiting in the sink for me for the same length of time. Then I swept the kitchen floor, and I couldn't remember the last time I did that. After this, I sat down in my armchair and started drinking another cup. I began to concentrate on the case, but after the second cup, I still didn't have any good ideas, so I poured another cupful. Halfway through that cup, I decided that my special mixture wasn't working that day. The best thing to do was to take the rest of the day off and relax. I decided to make some lunch and then return to my armchair and finish reading Henry Esmond. Henry Esmond. Suddenly, yes, an idea came. The events in Thackeray's novel take place in the last years of the 17th century and the first years of the 18th. The 17th century was a very violent time in English history. Civil wars, the execution of a king, and bloody battles all around England between royalists and parliamentarians. And I remembered that once I read that during this period, secret rooms or cupboards were installed in some big country houses. Rooms or cupboards big enough to hide people during the wars. There is one secret cupboard, big enough for a man, in Henry Esmond. Of course, these secret places don't show on any plans that still exist of the houses. The more I thought of the possibility of a secret room in Selina's 17th century house, the more I liked it. Both Selina and I were sure that the noise came from inside the house. I decided that the next thing to do was to search for a secret room. I didn't finish the third cup of coffee. I telephoned Selina immediately and asked her if I could go back to her house that day. I told her that I had an idea and that I needed to look at the house again. She said I could go whenever I wanted to. She also said that she had meetings to attend in 2 or 3 of her companies in the city. The security guards and the servants were already instructed to let me in at any time I went there. I thought for a moment before I left home. I decided to take a torch with me. It might be useful. I arrived at Selina's house at about 2 o'clock. I was let in and, firstly, I went through all the rooms on the first floor. I couldn't find any secret cupboards or any possible space for a secret room. I went down to the ground floor and did the same, with the same result. I sat down in an armchair to think. I tried to recall my conversations with Selina. Perhaps there was a clue in them. Suddenly, I remembered that she told me that there was no basement or cellar. She also told me that she once saw the plans of the house and no basement was shown. But secret spaces don't appear in the plans of houses. I decided to look for a way into a possible secret room below the ground floor. I went into all the rooms on the ground floor again. Nothing. I had to start thinking again. Then I remembered that in films, secret hiding places are usually opened and closed by levers. I went through all the rooms on the ground floor again. I was looking for a lever, or somewhere to conceal a lever. Again, nothing. I sat back down in the armchair. I was feeling frustrated. My eyes were still moving around the living room. Hopefully, they went back to the fireplace. Of course. What better place to hide a lever? I put my hand inside and began to grope from the bottom to the top of the left-hand side. Nothing but cold marble. I tried the right-hand side. The same. Then I moved my hand along inside the top part. Halfway along, my hand touched a piece of metal. A lever? I was feeling excited now. I tried to move the piece of metal to the right and to the left, but it didn't move. I tried going up. Nothing. I placed my hand above the metal and began to push down. The piece of metal moved easily, 3 or 4 inches downwards. At the same time, a large panel on the wall next to the fireplace slid behind the panel on its other side to leave a space about the size of a doorway. It was pitch black inside. I took my torch from one of the arms of the armchair and shone it into this new space. I saw 3 or 4 steps. I went down them. Then there was a turn to the right, and 3 or 4 steps more. When I arrived at the bottom of these, I saw that I was in a small room. I shone the torch all around that room. In the centre was a long table. On top of this table there were 3 oil lamps. In one corner of the room there was a pile of large colourful cushions, the kind you see around the living room on chairs and sofas. Beside these there was a smaller pile of the same cushions, but with the top surfaces cut open. I went to look at them. I put my hand inside one of the cuts. Nothing but feathers. Suddenly, I saw in another corner 6 or 7 brown paper bags, with the tops folded. I unfolded one of them. It contained what looked at first sight to be a lot of little pieces of dirty coloured glass. I reached in and took out a handful. When I looked again, I knew immediately what I was looking at. Not pieces of glass, but precious stones. Dirty, uncut, unpolished, and straight from the mines. Rubies and sapphires mainly, but some pearls as well. It was now obvious what was happening. Gems were being smuggled into the country inside the cushions. These then, somehow, made their way to this little basement. Then the cushions were cut open and the stones were extracted, ready to be sold, I supposed, to dealers who didn't ask questions about where the stones came from. They would then be cut and polished and used in the making of rings, necklaces, earrings, bracelets, and so on. I went upstairs, back to the living room. As I was leaving through the doorway, I saw another small lever at the top of the stairs. I took a risk and turned it upwards. The panel shut behind me. I didn't like the feeling of being locked inside that secret basement with only my torch for company. I quickly pushed the lever downwards. The panel sprang open again. Thank God, I thought. I went to the fireplace and pushed the lever upwards. The panel closed. How clever, I thought. A secret room with a lever outside to open and close it, and one inside as well.